This is the video for the Try It section of Lesson 11, Automating Procedures with Worksheet Events. For this lesson, you write a worksheet change event for your worksheet where any cell in column A, except cell A1, that I'm going to purposely exclude in the code, will accept a number that you enter and add it to whatever number was already in that cell to display a resulting sum. So for example, I've got cell A3 selected here, and under normal circumstances, if I were to, for example, enter the number 5 and then enter the number 2 on top of that, well, cell A3 is going to show the number 2. That was what I just entered. After the code is implemented, that you will see in a moment, what cell A3 will return is the number 7, because 5 was in there first and 2 got added on top of that, and then any number that you continue to add or enter into cell A3 will be added to the existing number that's in there. And the cells in column A, except for cell A1, will have that functionality with the code that you will write if you wanted to follow along or see how it gets written. When you get into the Visual Basic Editor, most of the time you've probably been pressing Alt F11, or if you're on later versions of Excel, you might have clicked the Developer tab and Visual Basic. This time, because you'll be working in the Worksheet module and its event code, come on down here to the Worksheet tabs, and for the worksheet where you want this change event to be, right-click on that sheet tab and find View Code, which you'll left-click to select, and there you are in the VBE and in the module of the Sheet 1 worksheet. What you want to do is enter in the worksheet change event subline, and the safest and most reliable way to do that is to first click the Object drop-down list and select Worksheet. VBA defaults to this selection change event that maybe is the most common one used. Maybe that's why Microsoft does this, I don't know, but in any case, that's something that we live with. And you'll come on over here to the Procedure drop-down list and click Change, because that's what you really want. And it's now okay to delete this selection change default subline. I'm going to enter in a few spaces here to give myself enough room to work. The target word here in the parameters for the worksheet change event refer to the fact that when a cell is changed on a worksheet, VBA will regard that cell as the target cell, and it assigns a range variable type, if you will, to that target. So what we want to say is that if we're going to exclude a particular cell, which we do, we want to exclude cell A1, I'm going to say if target.address equals A1, enclosed in double quotes with the dollar signs for the absolute reference to the column and the row. If target address equals A1, then exit sub. One of the most common ideas that you'll first mull over when you know that you'll be writing event code for the worksheet is to think to yourself if this code should apply to the entire worksheet or to only a part of it, like a range or a column or some localized area. In this case, we only want column A, except for A1, which we've already taken care of. But to make sure that only column A is the one that will fall under the worksheet change events monitoring, then you will say if target.column does not equal 1, I'm using 1 here because to VBA column A is column 1. Had we been working, for example, in column E, I would have put the letter or the number 5 in there because E is the 5th column. VBA regards columns as numbers just as it regards rows as numbers. If the target column is not A, or, and I only want to monitor one cell at a time, so I'm going to say if cells.count is greater than 1, then exit sub. Now what that means is that if someone were to try to enter one number in a lot of selected cells. They select a bunch of cells in column A and they enter a number in one of them. I don't want to have the code try to loop through all of those selected cells in a range. They might end up being a million or more in these later versions of Excel. So to keep things simple, we're only going to monitor one cell at a time and one numeric entry at a time. The next piece of business is to consider that there are going to be some times when you want to start off with a clean slate in a cell and hit the delete key and delete the contents of a cell in column A. If you do that, then you will be triggering the worksheet change event. So to avoid triggering that event, you'll say if is empty, which is not a very intuitive way to think of when you're deleting something, but if is empty target equals true, then exit sub. Finally, with regards to some of the concerns that you might have about items that are being entered that shouldn't be, and it happens to me a lot. I do this all the time. I enter in values that I'm not supposed to with change events, and I'm glad that I have code in here to remind me what I'm supposed to do. The phone rings, you get distracted, whatever the case is. Sometimes you or a user will not enter a number like they are supposed to in column A. So what you want to say if is numeric target.value equals false, then you have to close this in parentheses. You want to undo that action. If the code were left like this, it would be a disaster. The reason is that you are already in a change event, and if you were to undo a cell, which means you'll be changing the cell, then you'll be changing something that was in the process of a change event execution, and you will create what's called an infinite loop because you're constantly undoing, constantly changing, constantly undoing. You need to tell VBA to back off a little bit with monitoring its events, and to do that is a very useful line of code where you will say application.enableEvents equals false. You want to say for a very split second of time, I don't want you to worry about monitoring any changes because I'm about to undo what just got done. And set application enable events back to true after you've undone this. Now what I do, especially with event code, is I like to make it as user-friendly as possible. The user probably didn't know that they either were supposed to or really didn't enter in a number. They might have thought that they did. So with a message box, we're still in the if structure here. With the message box, I'll say you entered a non-numeric value, and use the VB exclamation icon. And then the title bar is a useful piece of real estate where you can add a little bit more info, and I'll say numbers only, please. Now you've got the user who has been notified that they did they attempted the type of entry that they are not allowed to do, that the column was not meant for, and you inform them it's numbers only, no harm, no foul, exit the sub, and if. And that pretty much takes care of all of the reasonable safeguards that have been met. When you're at this point in the code where we are right now and about to add more code to it, you've weeded out most of the possibilities of bad things that can happen, and you're able to go ahead with the business of declaring a couple of variables. One will be the number that was in the cell before the latest entry got changed, and we will say dim old val as double. I'm declaring these numbers as double because it might not be just integers that are being worked with. You never know. The user might want to enter in decimalized numbers. So dim old val is double. New val is double. New val will be the number that just got entered. Now, it's time to define new val equals target.value. You can do that because right now at this point in the code, none of the sum action has taken place. We haven't even coded it yet. VBA is right up to this point in the code where it'll say, okay, for a very split second, this number that got entered hasn't been summed yet to the number that was already there. And VBA can still look at it. It's not visible with the human eye, but there it is for VBA to see. And you can assign that value to the new val variable. And you'll want to expose the old variable, the old number rather, and assign it to the old val variable to expose it. I'm going to copy these two lines of code up here because they're very good. And I'm going to set enable events equals false again because I need to undo what just got entered that will expose whatever number was in that cell before. And old val now equals target.value. Okay. Now with application events still set to false, you can sneak in here by saying now target.value equals old val plus new val. And press enter. Set the enable events property for the application object back to true. And there is your procedure for having numbers in column A, except for cell A1, to be summed as each number is entered into that same cell. I'm going to press all the Alt Q keys and enter the header label in here in cell A1 that is not a part of this event code, even though it's in column A. And I'll say running sums. And then select some cell in column A, say A6. I'll enter the number 5. And now if I enter the number 3, what we will see is the number 8. If I enter the number 1, it'll be 9. If I enter the number 7, you'll get 16, and so on and so forth. If you want a 0 to be in there, you can have a minus 16 to negate what positive value is there. And if you want nothing, you've allowed yourself to press the delete key without triggering the event code for column A. Now I'm going to be in another column, column B, and if I enter any numbers or anything else, pardon me, the behavior of Excel will be what you'd expect without being encumbered by the change event. And that is how you can use the change event to create running sums of numbers in a cell or an entire column or range of cells.